tonight we are working on something that the whole family loves, and that is lamb sausage. Well, as I said, this is a recipe that everybody here really enjoys, and essentially what it is, we use a Pennsylvania Dutch sausage recipe, which has a lot of spices in it, which we'll kind of go over in a second, but goes really well with lamb. But you really can use this for anything. I've in the past used it for venison. It's really good. I've even used it for goose, and it's really good. One thing before I kind of get into it too far here, the recipe does call for bacon or pork to be added to it, but we've done some experimenting, and tonight we're making 100% lamb. We're not adding bacon or pork to it because we don't have any, but we also have found that there's enough fat in the lamb to keep it from drying out too much. It does taste a little different than the version that's mixed with the pork, but everybody here still likes it. So this is not our first time trying this way. So something to think about if you don't have the pork product to add to it. Okay, so first things first, this recipe is for 5 pounds of meat. So we're just going to weigh it out here. I am just going to leave the bag in, or leave the wrapper on, and sort of see what's about 5 pounds. Should be 5 packages of this, but well, it's going to be more than that. So there we go. I'm just going to go with that. It doesn't have to be exact, so I'm going to get this all unwrapped and into our bowl, and we're going to go and mix our spices.
So Chris has left me to the fun part and the math part, and I'm mixing up our spices. Now, as he said earlier, this recipe has a lot of spices in it, so my suggestion is mix them ahead of time in a container, and that way you know it's nice and evenly dispersed rather than sprinkling it on, because when you sprinkle it on, you tend to get a bunch of onion powder here and garlic powder there, and it just doesn't quite work unless you're going to do a whack load of mixing. So we're going to kind of go through this as quickly as I can, and then I will write the recipe in the description below because, like I said, there's a lot of spices. I mean, if I count this quickly, there's 12 different spices in this recipe. So it is a bit intense to kind of go through it all in a video and do it quickly. But the most substantial part of the recipe is brown sugar. So you want to have, oh, I bit the thing, half a cup of lightly packed brown sugar, 2 teaspoons of salt, 1 teaspoon garlic powder, 1 teaspoon of onion powder, and I'm going to just kind of break up. There's a little bit of a chunk there. I don't want that in my meat. 2 teaspoons of black pepper. Abby, he's just staring. I have a cat sitting right over there that's just staring at this going, can I please have some? Half a teaspoon of coriander. I'm working with 1/4 teaspoon. That's why I've got 2 in there. 1/4 teaspoon of allspice. 1/4 teaspoon of nutmeg. 1/4 teaspoon of cinnamon. It really is all these kind of odd spices in there that make this one, I think. The cinnamon, the nutmeg, that sort of thing. Also makes it very good for venison, like Chris was saying. 1/4 teaspoon of your savory. 1/8 teaspoon of ground cumin. And last but not least is hot chili powder. And really this is going to come down to your taste. I'm going to do 1/8 teaspoon, but you could soup that up to whatever your taste buds require. We are not super big on spicy here. And then basically we just stir that all up. Like I said, this is nice to get it all mixed together before you get it trying to disperse amongst the meat. So we're going to continue to stir that up, get it all mixed together, and then we'll bring you back.
So we're back to the ground meat portion of this. So I'm going to break these up a bit. They're all thawed out, which is good. We were kind of talking here because we did mention that you can use pork in this, depending on what you're using, because obviously I keep going back to the venison. Venison's a little leaner than the lamb. I mean, you can see the lamb here is got some pretty good mix of fat into it. And if you're doing that, you're still aiming for 5 pounds sort of for a batch, but you're going to probably do it approximately, give or take, 1.5 pounds of the pork product, i.e. if you were doing the venison, and the rest be your meat of choice. So something to keep in mind. I'm going to kind of keep going ahead with this, and then once I get it all broken up to a bit more manageable state, I'm going to mix in the spices and the brown sugar mixture that we got, so we can get that kind of worked in or kneaded into this fairly well. But of course, when you're doing something like this, you definitely want to have your hands clean before getting in there and doing this step. So we're going to dump in a little bit of this mixture at a time to kind of get it in rather than just sort of dumping it all in. I mean, if you have a sausage mixer, then you could totally use that for this. We don't, and that's kind of why we didn't.
Sorry for the camera shaking.
Yeah, that's kind of why we didn't up scale this. I mean, you could do more meat, but then you got to have a bigger bowl and it's harder to get it all mixed in well. So the next step is pretty simple. We're making little meatballs basically. And then what we do, because this is a freezer recipe, or we freeze a lot of them, we freeze them raw. And Stephanie's going to do here, we just
put it between 2 pieces of wax paper. This is an amazing tool. We actually found it at a thrift store. If you ever find one, grab it. But you basically just take your meatball, press it down. It's beautiful, even pressure. And voila! Meat patties.
And we do leave them with the wax paper between them because that makes it easier to get them apart when it's time to cook them.
Yes, the nice thing about these is you can basically cook them from frozen, which is fantastic. And we're going to do them in packs of 8 so that we can each have 2 when we open them up. And that's really the process. So we'll bring you back when we've got them all done, and we'll see how many we got out of this 5-pound batch. I was just saying to Chris, normally we do double this, so it'll be interesting to see what we get. Well, the breakfast patties are all made up. We ended up with 7 bunches of 8, which is awesome. And then enough for Chris and I for breakfast tomorrow, which we will bring you back at the end of this video to show you these tomorrow for breakfast. But that's 56 little patties out of our 5 pounds. It ended up being a little bit less than 3/4 of a pound for 8 of them. Realistically, these patties don't need to be huge. It's a breakfast meal, or, well, we do have breakfast for dinner sometimes too. But either way, there's very little, well, there's no filler at all, really. I mean, it's just spices and the meat. But these are fantastic for a nice quick meal. It's a great recipe and doesn't require the casings. That doesn't mean that you couldn't put it into sausage casings if that's what you want. Well, there we go, folks. As promised, breakfast of champions. Our sausages for breakfast. Sausage patties, I guess I should say. Anyways, we're going to enjoy this, but I hope you enjoyed the video and definitely give the recipe a try.